This movie is about formulas. We're going to build a formula, and we're going to tell Excel we're going to build a formula by preceding our data entry with a plus or an equal sign. We'll look at 4 ways of building a formula by 1, typing it into a cell, 2, typing it into the formula bar, 3, arrowing to the reference cells that make up the formula, and 4, clicking on the cells that are referenced within the formula that are on the same worksheet that we are working within and that are on a different worksheet in the same workbook that we're working within and that are on yet different workbooks that are outside of the workbook that we are working within. So this movie is about formulas. A formula is an established mathematical relationship between numbers that give you a result. So we have mathematical operators and we have some numbers that we can start building a formula with. In Excel, the way you begin a formula so that Excel knows that you're building a formula is to precede your formula with either an equal sign or a plus sign. In this case, I'm going to begin it with an equal sign. One of the ways to enter a formula into the cell is first to begin with an equal sign and then type the reference cells and the mathematical operators. In this case, I want to begin my formula by referencing G6, and I want to add G7 and get the result. When I enter the formula into the cell, and when I go into the edit mode by pressing F2, which I'll show you in a second, Excel maps out the formula references by color coding the elements of the formula with the reference cell for which that element refers. So we have G6 being blue in the formula, and it's boxed out in blue. We have G7 being green. I'll Control Enter and get the result. 4 plus 2 is 6. G6 plus G7 is showing in the formula bar, preceded by an equal sign, which is how I established the fact that this is a formula. Another way that I could have done this is to left-click in the formula bar and type the formula there. In this case, I'm going to precede it with a plus sign. G6, my mathematical operator, G7, Control Enter, and I get my formula. Excel automatically puts an equal sign before the plus sign, so the formula really reads equal plus G6 plus G7. I get the same result. It's 4 plus 2, which equals 6. And I mentioned that you can press F2 to get the color coding display. This is the edit mode. It displays the formula. It's a way to change and adjust and edit the content of the cell. We saw that in a prior movie. Another way that I could have built this formula, and I'm going to precede it with an equal sign this time, is to arrow over, up, over, to the cells that are referenced within the formula. I'm using the arrow keys, Control Enter, I get my formula result, 6. The fourth way to build a formula, and again I'm going to precede it with an equal sign, is to left-click the cells you want to reference. I left-click using my mouse, plus G7, Control Enter, and I get my formula once again. Now that we know we can build a formula by left-clicking on the referenced cells, that's actually the preferred method if you're referencing cells off the worksheet into another worksheet or into another workbook. We're going to start by building a formula that references cells within another worksheet. I'll begin my formula with an equal sign, equal 4 plus 2, plus left-click sheet 2, left-click cell C5, Control Enter, and I get my result, 4 plus 2 plus 12, which is 18. The formula bar shows the formula, G6 plus G7 plus G5, but what G5? Which G5 am I building the formula with? It's the G5 that resides in sheet 2. So when you go off of the sheet, the active sheet that you're building the formula within, Excel needs to know that. So it captures the cell address, which in this case includes the sheet address. And the syntax for the sheet address is the sheet name followed by an exclamation point followed by the cell that you're referencing on that sheet. If sheet 2 exclamation point wasn't there, this formula would pick up the contents that's in C5 on the active sheet that we're building the formula on. You can do the same thing, equal G6 plus G7 plus, by referencing other workbooks. C4 on book 1, sheet 1, control enter. And now the formula is displayed with the cell address that's required to go outside of this workbook into another workbook. So we have G6 plus G7. We have the other workbook in brackets, book1.xlsx, followed by what we saw before, the sheet address on book 1, sheet 1 exclamation point, followed by the cell on sheet 1 within book 1 that we're referencing, which is C4. You also see dollar signs that precede C and 4, the cell address C4. We're going to cover that in another movie. That's an absolute reference. So we found that formulas were preceded by a plus or an equal sign, and that we can construct a formula by typing it directly into the cell, or typing the formula directly into the formula bar, or we can work within the cell that's going to contain the formula and arrow around to select the reference cells that are used to build the formula with, or we can work within the cell and left-click on the referenced cells. That would probably be the way we would want to build a formula if we were going to reference cells on another worksheet within the workbook, and certainly if we were going to reference cells within a different workbook.